Hey Dee, I have a joke for you from Acres of Bloom. She put it on our Facebook Garden Club page.
Oh, did she? And I don't know if I saw that or not. Okay,
Here
go.
goes. How did the millionaire gardener get rich so quickly?
I don't know. How?
He was running a huge pansy scheme.
Oh, that's a good one. I thought you were going to talk about how popular our Grandma Core gardening episode was.
That was the other teaser I had in mind, but it was very popular, I think.
Yeah, no joke. It was a lot of fun to produce too.
Yes, it was. But I think this week's episode will be just as fun.
Only one way to find out. I'll get us started.
You
Welcome
do
to the
that.
Garden Angelus, where we chat about flowers, veggies, and all the best dirt. I am Dee Nash from Guthrie, Oklahoma, where I am downsizing my country garden. Fingers crossed, we start next week.
And I'm Carol Michael from Indianapolis, Indiana. I have a suburban garden measured in square feet. It's about a third of an acre.
We are Garden Angelus because we love gardening and we want you to love it too.
Yes, we do. And we aren't afraid to tell all of our gardening secrets, the good, the bad, and even the ugly. But let's move on to this week's episode. I almost did our last intro. Hello, Dee.
Hey Carol, how are you today? And how is the sun shining in Indianapolis?
It's shining very bright. As you can see, I had to close the blinds because that is south
Mm,
and it's very bright. And there's a window up there that I can't really close. So it looks like the sun is shining upon me. I can't complain.
yeah, no, it's sunny here too. So tell me about your garden. What did you do this week?
So, first of all, I think it was Monday, Tuesday, Monday,
Yeah.
Tuesday. It was really, really nice. And I think it was Tuesday. And I went outside and I trimmed back a few more perennials. And, I'm doing the chop and drop. And so I'm not like putting it all in a bag and sending millions of insects into the trash, dropping them right there on the ground. Went ahead and pruned back one of the figs because my figs died to the ground because I'm in the Midwest. So I cut back one of those. I've got all my house plants tended to because I attempted to start my taxes. So that meant I had a lot of attending to house plants and laundry and different things that I had to get done. So I ran out of time. But anyway, on that particular day, I did start more microgreens and they're doing nicely. And I also went to the bookstore and I bought a bunch of books. All right, next.
Uh, what now about the books?
So, I ordered some good used gardening books for my lost ladies. And then
I do.
I went to Half Price Books here in my side of town and I
Mhm.
picked up a book. I sent you a text of the picture of the one because I thought of
Mhm.
you. It still might show up in your mail someday.
Oh, I'm excited.
You want a children's monarch book from 1966, don't you?
Heck yeah. Why not? Yeah.
But so then a friend and I went out to the west side of town to Half Price Books and they had like five or six gardening books by women authors that I thought, these were put here for me. So,
They were. They were just for you.
and then some miscellaneous books came along for the ride. And that's all I want to say about that.
Okay.
We all need an original D.E. Stevenson from 1949, don't we? Called
Yes,
Mrs. Savage?
undoubtedly.
Undoubtedly. Okay, your garden.
So Bill and I finally got those vents fixed on the greenhouse.
Yay.
Yay, he finally tracked down the fuse. He felt good enough to stand long enough to be able to do this. Actually, and this is a Bill update too. Bill is doing a lot better. He is not moving along as fast as he would like to, and he hates that, but he has done a lot of work. It's like all of this fix it stuff was pent up inside of him. And so he fixed my vents. And so I actually fixed them with him because I got up there and he was too tired and he had found the fuse broken. And it sounds easy to fix the vents in that greenhouse, but it is not easy. You have to undo all the gears first, loosen everything, figure out which way the line goes to open or close it, tighten everything back up, try it, and it was not right the first time. So then I had to undo them all again. And then on top of that, when you when it spins, when that rod spins through all those gears,
Right?
it can make the gears end up where you can't get to the holes to unscrew them. So then you have to take out the cotter pin and this other pin. And
Oh, Dee, it
I
just
was just
sounds,
like, it
uh,
was hard. It was really hard, but we got it done and it now works perfectly. And every time it opens and closes, I feel a lot of pride. And then,
yay.
so in honor of that, the next day I went outside and I just puttered in my greenhouse all day long because he had torn up a bunch of plants. You know,
Right?
men, not to pick on men, I like men, but they, Bull in the China closet was actually, never mind. So he tore up some of my plants. All my stuff was everywhere. And so I cleaned it all up. And then I went out there 3 days this week and I
Wow.
worked on the pelargonians, trimmed all of them up. I did a small story video on that. And then I fed them. And I also potted up some things in the greenhouse too, which made me happy. And anyway, oh, I also installed my LED lights with his help because
Excellent.
I went down there to plug them in like they should have been.
Yeah.
No, they required a slightly different fixture for their pins to fit into on one end. So Bill had to rewire the fixture. I watched him do it. It's not too hard. And then I think we put up 3 or 4 of them. And then I actually had old bulbs that had never been used. And I put those in the other two because I was like, I don't want to rewire anymore. It was dinner time and I was tired.
Yeah.
And so I did that. And eventually we will fix that, but it doesn't matter right now. And
You are in business now, lady. You are in business now.
I am in business. And so let's hope that there's a squirrel out on my deck that is staring at me going, are you going to hurt me? No, no, little squirrel, little rat with tail. I'm not going to hurt you, even though you're on my deck and trying to figure out how to get in the bird feeder. So there you go. That's what I did.
Yeah. So anyway, I did want to tell you that one of the books that did arrive in the mail this past week, and we'll talk about one that didn't, it was Geraniums for Home and Garden.
Is that a new one or is that your
Yes,
old
I
one?
got everything you would need to know about geraniums or something like that. And then I also got Geraniums for Home and Garden. So I have two books from mid-century about geraniums.
And they're really about pelargoniums because we
Pelargoniums,
call
correct.
those are tropical geraniums. And subtropical because they'll live where it's really cold. I have one lady online who was like, why are my geraniums still alive in my garage? It got down to 3 degrees. And I said, because they're tough. They're
They're
really
very tough.
tough. But geraniums, true geraniums are perennial, but nobody writes about those much. Now, one person did, and I have that book. Now I want these books, these pelargonium books. You're going to have to send me the titles.
I will review them first to make sure that they are worthy of your bookshelves.
Okay, cool. So, what's your favorite this week?
Crocuses in the lawn. Dee, they are everywhere in the lawn. And I
That
go
is
through
so
this
cool.
phase where a few of them pop up and then a few more. And then I think, well, why aren't there any here? And then I look out like this morning and it's like, they are all over the lawn. They have not all been
Hmm.
dug up by squirrels and chipmunks and critters. They are all over the lawn. And some of them have seeded themselves into flower beds. And some of them are in big clumps. So I know the corms down there are just dividing themselves in those big clumps. So it's crocus season in my garden.
And as the kids say, you are here for it.
I am here for it. And they're blooming in the front. So when people walk by, they're like, she is the crazy gardening lady. Look at all those crocuses.
I love it. I think that's really cool. So, my favorite this week is a beautiful begonia, because I also worked on the begonias. A beautiful begonia I bought at Big Creek Nursery in Stillwater last year. And I'm just going to give a plug for Big Creek Nursery. If you're going to go over to Bustani, you owe it to yourself to go over to Big Creek too,
Okay.
because he has the most interesting succulents. And he also has really interesting begonias, really interesting herbs. He and Steve complement each other because they carry very different things.
Cool.
So I
That's what
bought
you
it
want.
there. It is a gorgeous thing. I'll try to ID it. It has an interesting leaf shape. It's kind of jagged, I guess. And it has small peachy pink flowers, and the leaves come in as one color and then mature to another color.
Cool.
And I almost think it's spotted too. I mean, really, this thing has everything going for it, and it's in a big blue pot. And it's been happy all winter. I like this plant very much. And so, as an aside, I was looking at Beth Teal's Facebook because she brings her begonias into the house and uses them as house plants in the wintertime.
Right.
She's up in Tulsa. And so she shared about that. And then I said, I love begonias. I just commented. And another lady who I know, Janie, she posted the deer ate all mine, which is what gardeners say. Gardeners are like, I don't have any more, and I get it.
Oh, yeah.
So I sent a little gift to her, and it was this little creature going behind somebody's legs, and I said, "You have to hide them." And everybody just laughed and laughed, and so it was kind of
That is
fun.
funny. That is funny. I did want to tell you that one of the books that I have not gotten, and it might be in today's mail,
Good Lord.
is Begonias for Home and Garden, written by the same author who wrote Geraniums for Home and Garden back I think they're from the 50s.
Okay, so
So
people who like geraniums almost always like begonias too. Think about it. Even though
the
they're
leaves.
different plants,
Yes.
they have
Yes.
interesting leaves and sometimes they smell good and, all those things.
Anyway, let's see if it arrives today because Amazon sent me an email and said, because it was a used bookseller on Amazon, they said, we have not
Uh
charged you because she has not said that she's shipped it yet, or the seller has
oh.
not notified us of shipment. And then I thought, uh-oh. But then I have something coming today and I thought, I wonder what it is. Maybe it's that book.
I had that happen with a book and Amazon refunded my money and then the book came a month later.
That happened with me with a
A
book. I
whole
can't even
month.
remember which one, but it didn't come. It didn't come. It didn't come. And I said, Amazon, it never came. So they canceled the order. And then like 3 weeks later, up shows this book. I'm like, and it was the only one in the entire internet that was for sale.
Right. I remember this, I think.
And
Yeah.
I remember it and I'm thinking, who was that author? They just get confused for me after a while. I kind of can
There's been
picture the
so
book.
many.
Never mind. Let's go on to
Let's
the
move on to
question of
the
the
question
week.
of the week. Shall I ask it and you answer? It's
That's
your
cool.
act. It's your question. Are you ready? Okay.
Yes.
Can I trim my roses back now? Is it too early to start tomatoes and peppers? Am I already behind?
Well, I made up the second two questions, but the can I trim my roses back now? My
Yes.
sister sent me that right the week after it had been like almost down to zero all the time. And I'm like, no, wait a week or so. Now I
Yeah,
think
just wait because they're a little stressed for you guys. But here, you guys can trim them back. I've been trimming back since January,
I
really.
always say when it gets to March, you can pretty safely trim them back. Now I will say, Dee, that, and I don't know if Teresa Byington, our rose chat friend, would concur on this, but
I'm not
we
sure
went
I do.
from really nice in the fall
Uh-huh.
to dang, it's cold. And
Uh-huh.
some of the roses, and I don't have that many, they look bad. I'm like, this
Yeah.
looks pretty dead all the way
Well,
down.
and
And
that
like,
and
I'm
sometimes
waiting.
that happens. That happens sometimes. My Valentine roses, they were a type that was marginal here. And last year they were in pots and they never went dormant. And then we had a bad deal of cold and they died. Even though I trimmed them back to what little bit was alive, they just couldn't do it. I would say if they're newly planted, you're in much more danger than you are if they're not. And if they're in a pot versus in the ground, you should have brought those pots in your climate into the garage anyway. And then the technical advice on roses is you're supposed to do it when they're dormant. You're supposed to do all that trimming back. But here's the deal, they never really fully go dormant in Oklahoma anymore. So I just trim them when I feel like it and don't worry about it.
Yeah. And I planted these 2 years ago. They're the ones, and I can't remember the name off the top of my head.
Rise up, Averness, right?
Yeah. Rise Up something.
Yeah,
Yes.
or
Rise
rise
Up
up,
Amberness. Amberness.
Amberness. Yeah, because it's based on Averness, but it's Amberness because it's yellow.
And they were not yellow enough for me. Remember, I kind of complained.
Yes,
And I don't
they
think
were
that
kind of orangey.
they were that established. And I'm looking at those saying, I think these are goners. So time
Well,
for
you
something
can tell
else.
they're goners if the canes are all shriveled up and they aren't kind of pinkish. So,
They are not pinkish. They are brown all the way to the ground.
they're probably gone.
So
Sorry, you
the
didn't
the
like them
next
anyway.
the next two parts of the question, is it too early to start tomatoes and peppers? Your neck of the woods?
Still too early. Should
my
do it
neck of the woods.
mid-March.
And so people get really panicked that they're behind. And I see when I go on Facebook, I'll see sometimes that somebody's sowing like green bean seeds inside in January. It's like you're nuts, or cucumbers or something. And like there's a bigger window of time to do things in the garden than one would imagine.
Yeah, usually windows are really good. And so I
Yes,
have a question that goes along with that question. I wonder if I have waited too long to shear back my lavender. It's a good question, isn't it?
that is a good question. So
Because it is tall.
related to Facebook and our garden club, Dee, I have tried several times. I cannot seem to get to where people leave messages for us to reply to. And so
Yeah.
you said that Deb was telling me about a pansy sale down in Mooresville. I see information about that. And I always think one day I'll go down there. I think this year I might go down there. It's March
I
the
think you
15th.
should.
Somebody else had a question out there, but it just spins for me. It gets confused, thinks I'm going to May Dreams Gardens, my blog page. I don't know. But anyway, I cannot respond to those messages on Facebook. I apologize if I've missed others, but I will try to go down to Mooresville and check out their pansy sale. I'm all about
Anytime
it.
I see, it always tells me. So anytime I see it, I just take a screenshot of it for you and send it to you. So
And
even
that
though
is
you're
what you
not
did.
responding, people can see, just like you forward the messages from Buzzsprout to me, because sometimes I see those, sometimes I don't. And I think part of the problem is because we are co-podcasters and we're co-whatevers on all of these things, the the stupid computers can't keep straight who is who, and so they don't know who to send stuff to.
Well, like Buzzsprout's under me and the Facebook group's under you. And so, anyway,
And Garden Angelist is under both of us on the email.
exactly.
So it's just whoever's logged in at the time. And it really
Exactly.
gets confused because Gmail isn't set up so you can go in there and be both logged in. It won't
Yes.
let us.
Yes. So many questions this week, and hopefully we've answered a few questions. I'm going to do a quote. We're going to talk about a flower. If you will stay close to nature, to its simplicity, to the small things hardly noticeable, those things can unexpectedly become great and immeasurable. Rainier Maria Rilke? I don't know.
I don't know.
Rilke.
We'll just say we're okay. I like that. Okay, flowers. We decided to do something new this year,
We did.
which is we're going to be alphabetical and feature some specific flowers, some of which we have, some of which we haven't. And we're going to do the same for vegetables. So A is for,
Before we go there, let us talk
oh,
about the synergy of how we came up for this. So we've always struggled with a vegetable topic, and you
always.
said, why don't we just go down through the alphabet for the vegetables? And I said, great idea.
I think that was from Burpee. That I think they did something about alphabetical. So it wasn't really my idea, but I could just pretend it
And then
is.
I said, if we're going to do it for vegetables, let's do it for flowers too. And then, like the next 26 episodes, it's just the letter of the alphabet.
Yeah, make it much easier on us. So A is for,
We're going to do an annual and a perennial, and I'll do the annual, you'll do the perennial this week. Alyssum,
mhm.
which I think does much better in my garden than it does in yours because
Yeah,
uh,
because it gets too hot here.
yes, it gets too hot, and when alyssum gets really hot, it stops blooming. It can actually dry out and wither away on you. In my garden, I always buy a flat of alyssum in the spring when I buy my pansies. I like to tuck it in as a teeny tiny flower. It attracts all kinds of pollinators, all kinds
It
of
smells good,
interesting bees. It smells delicious. And
like honey.
it will tolerate much more frost than people imagine. I mean, if if I go to the greenhouse soon, and I hope I do go soon, to get my pansies and violas, if they have some alyssum that's big enough, I will go ahead and buy it. Because that's the other thing. I like to buy it when it's just big enough because in those flats, it can get really leggy on you. And then it's just kind of a tangled mess. But
Hmm.
I like it to tuck into things.
Hmm. I mean, it's a good early flower here. If you want to grow at the same time you do pansies, it's not quite as hardy as a pansy though. So I think it's just iffy for our client. I will say this, when I was young and just starting out as a gardener, our temperatures were more moderate. And so I could grow it then better.
So in the Burpee catalog, interestingly enough, they have the classic white, which is carpet of snow.
Yep,
But if you go online, they have also have royal carpet, which is shades of purple. And
sure.
they, I think they list 2,500 seeds per packet, which tells you the size of the seeds, teeny tiny, which is why when you go to buy a flat of them, there's like, seems like 50 seedlings in one little tray because they're just too tiny. But I went out to True Leaf Market. They have 8 or 9 varieties, and most I think of purples, light purples, whites. Dee, have you ever seen the yellow?
I've never seen the yellow in
Golden
person.
yellow. They have one, and I'm like, ooh, I am so tempted to get one of those golden yellow ones. So that's going to send me to the True Leaf Market site, and then you can't go and buy just one packet of seeds. I'll be shopping, and I don't want.
Um,
I want to do it before Wednesday. One of the 2 golds that they have is sold out, so they just have the one. I think it's called Basket of Gold. So I successfully winter sowed some Alyssum last year, and I may just try to throw some out in a jug and see what happens, or under my palatial
better
palace of
do it soon.
yes. Well, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, because you're already talking about going and getting pansies. So
I know.
I would do it soon. I will say royal carpet or royal carpet, which is the purple, kind of purple and white one.
Yes.
It looks great under yellow daffodils.
Oh, yes, yes. Now
It does.
I rarely plant these in the ground. I almost always just plant them in containers. So, well, you know what? I have to go back and eat those words. I do
Hmm.
plant them in the ground. I always plant them at the ends of my vegetable garden beds in the spring,
Hmm.
along with snapdragons, which we can't talk about because that's the letter S. But I plant them in the corners of the vegetable garden beds because it does bring in pollinators and adds a
Hmm.
little spark of color. There are some tulips
We
that kind
could
of
talk about
sporadically.
snapdragons.
No, Antirrhinum. Yes, the botanical name. We
Ah,
did
ha,
not
ha, you
clarify
got
that.
it. You got it. I
We
was
did
like,
not clarify.
wait a minute,
Are we
botanical
going by
name.
the botanical name or are we going
Well,
by the common name?
sometimes,
Yes.
sometimes.
Oh, we might have to continue A next week because there's too many.
There's
We
a
This
lot of
may go on for
A's.
yes.
Yeah,
Anyway,
there are a lot of A's.
I have blathered on enough about Alyssum, which is something that you never think about it, but I would sure miss it if I didn't have it.
So alyssum does better in Oklahoma if we plant it in the ground. It doesn't dry out as bad.
That's
Um,
true.
and that's in prepared soil. Always assume when I say something does well in the garden, I'm talking about prepared soil unless I state different. Do not plant stuff in your ugly red clay or your ugly red sand directly. Nothing does well then. So
By prepared, you mean amended. A is for
amended
amended
soil.
soil. We could
A
have
is
done
for
that.
amended. Oh well. Next time. Next time we could do amended soil when we do then the other A. Never mind. Okay, so the perennial is either Agastache or Agastache. Tomato, tomato, potato, potato. So it's also known as anise hyssop, which is also an A word. So it's a
Yes.
double A. So here's the deal. Funiculum. It's Agastache or Agastache funiculum. And so I got this information from the Ladybird Johnson Wildflower Center. I've grown it off and on for years.
I
All
too have
right.
grown it.
It is part of the mint family, Lamiaceae. Listen to me. Listen to me just rolling off those Latin and Greek terms.
Ooh, aren't you the
So
botanist?
just today because I already looked it up. So it is native and it's native throughout the United States and it's native in part of Canada, the part where people can live. The other part, nobody lives. So it's a perennial. It has terminal spikes. They have tubular, bright blue flowers in the native form. Okay. And it is very pretty. And I actually have the native in my upper pasture in the prairie, in my meadow, because it grows there naturally. So it is a very good flower for native pollinators, honeybees. It's just a really good flower. It has a lot of little blooms that they can get nectar from.
Yes, and
Here's the hard.
let me say this.
Okay.
I grow the variety Blue Fortune.
Me too. I was going to mention that. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry to jump ahead, but I did want to say that that is one of the last flowers blooming in my garden in the fall. I leave it, and I just trimmed it back a couple of weeks ago because I don't want it to self-sow. The neighbors are starting to get a little suspicious about weird flowers showing up in their gardens and stuff. But anyway, it always has bees on it right until the very end, and I love that about it. Now, planting it right by the sidewalk where people walk by and those bees are all over it. Maybe some people don't think that's a great idea, but I like it.
Here's the thing, those bees won't bother you. They might
No,
fly up because they're disturbed, but they're not interested in you. The only
no.
time you get stung by a bee or a wasp is if you lay your hand down on top of them and squeeze or sit on them. Wasps always seem to be where you're sitting, or you're by their nest. That's the only time they want anything to do with you. So, and even then, and we've talked about this before, I uncovered a bumblebee nest 2 years ago in the ground in my garden, and I backed away quickly. And you know what? They didn't bother me a bit. But the lady who occasionally helps me in the garden, I told her it was there. I said, stay away from that part of the garden, let them alone. She just had a weed over there, and it buzzed her several times before she got stung.
We want to
So,
hear a true story. A ground nesting bumblebee. This is right after my dad had died, and my mom just had me throw some flower seeds where the vegetable garden used to be because she didn't really grow vegetables. And so we
mhm.
were kind of cleaning up in the fall, and I realized there was a bumblebee nest, and that's the first time I've ever been stung by a bumblebee. That thing
Yep.
came up out of there, and it stung me, right in that little fleshy part between your thumb and your
Ouch.
index finger.
The
It hurt
webbing.
like the dickens. I'm like holding
Yeah.
that part of my hand right now because it hurt like the dickens.
I stepped on one once. It really hurt. I mean, it hurt with a special kind of hurt.
Yeah.
Nobody likes
Anyway,
that. So back to Agastache. Golden Jubilee is actually named as a really good plant to grow in Oklahoma. I have never grown it, but it's a cultivar that has lime green leaves instead of just regular leaves. Otherwise, it looks almost exactly like Blue Fortune. And then also they're scented. Their leaves are scented, and so I think, and honestly, well, I'm not going to say this. They smell a lot like licorice, which is why they are called anise hyssop. All
they do
right.
smell like licorice. I love that smell.
So now I was going to say, I think you can make a tea out of them, but I don't know if that's true for sure. So don't, I've never done it. So don't, you go look it up, people. All right. So the other piece of this is there's a whole bunch of new cultivars out there,
Wait,
yellow
before you leave
ones.
that golden jubilee, I just looked it up. I need to
It's
have it.
pretty.
It's so
It's really
beautiful with those
pretty.
light yellowish leaves. Plus,
Hmm.
it's a All America selections from 2003, so it's automatically in the good category. I'm
Hmm.
assuming it's hardiness for zone 6A. I'm sure it
It
is.
is. It is. I
I
looked it
needs
up.
that. I needs that. Oh, look, Select Seeds has it.
Oh, now you've got two places to go. All right. So now let's talk about the cultivars, the fancy ones, the yellow ones, the golden ones, the almost white ones, the peachy ones. If you're going to grow those, at least in my climate, put them in a pot. Don't grow them as a perennial, grow them as an annual. Enjoy them because they are beautiful in a pot because they're a vertical accent. They could be either your thriller or your filler, depending on the size of the plant, because they're all different sizes. Don't expect them to overwinter. I have yet to have one of those overwinter. Now, Steve at Bustani Plant Farm, he
Right?
has Bolero, which he sells. Bolero does pretty well here, and I've had it overwinter just fine, but it is not one of the golden ones. So that's just a tip from someone who has killed tons of them, tons. And I've grown them from seed too. You can grow Agastache, all the almost, well, I shouldn't say all. You can grow, even of the cultivars, you can grow quite a few of them from seed.
Well, I was just going to tell you that I've been over here clickety click. Select Seeds
Hmm.
has Augusta Key Golden Jubilee seeds,
You
and the
said
packet
that.
is now sitting in my cart.
Yeah, I just kept talking because I knew what you were doing. I could see you. All right. So I think of all of the ones we've talked about, Blue Fortune is the absolute easiest to grow.
Exactly.
It will overwinter here for 2, 3 seasons, and then sometimes it's done. It does reseed, so you get new ones.
It's
I
been
think
going
sometimes
strong here for 8, 10 years.
it
Same.
blooms itself to death here.
Oh my
When you think
gosh.
about when it starts blooming and when it ends,
Yes.
it just poops itself out
I
eventually.
will deadhead it if I remember to in the summertime. I will cut it back a little bit just to give it a little oomph to get going
You
again for
should.
fall. So I have fresh blooms for the bees. I'm all
And
about
I'll
it.
also say this, basically, it likes sandy soil that is only moderately amended. It is a native after all, and so it wants to be treated kind of like a native. And at the same time, just don't expect it. If it dies, then just say, "Oh well, I need another one. I'm going to plant another one." Because it
Just go
is so
get you one.
pretty.
Just go get one.
And one of my friends came over one day, and I photographed the heck out of it 2 years ago because I had probably 5 plants of it in that one flower bed,
Right?
and
Right?
it was exquisite. And she came over and she said, "Oh wow, it looks much prettier in person." I didn't know how to take that, but whatever.
Do a quote. Let's talk about a vegetable.
From December to March, there are for many of us 3 gardens: the garden outdoors, the garden of pots and bowls in the house, and the garden of the mind's eye by Catherine S. White. Her S does not have a period after it because that's how she wrote it. And her name is spelled Katharine.
Yes. And her husband was E.B. White, and she's famous for being an editor at the New Yorker and writing garden letters back and forth with Elizabeth Lawrence.
We love them both. And that was one of my very first gardening books that I just poured. I mean, it's a wonderful book.
Her garden book, which is a
Yes.
reprint
Onward
of
and upward in the garden, right?
right. It's a reprint of many of the columns that she wrote for the New Yorker about gardening.
And aren't some of her letters with Elizabeth Lawrence also published through Elizabeth
Yes.
Lawrence?
Two
Yeah, that's what
gardeners.
I thought.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the other one. Yeah.
Yeah. Two worthwhile books. We'll put links to them. You can find them. Use copies available everywhere.
Everywhere. They're very popular. So vegetables. A is for,
Artichokes, arugula, and asparagus. But
yeah.
we're not going to talk about all those. We've talked about asparagus before, and
Yeah.
we'll just move arugula to when we talk about the R's because the common name is rocket. But I wanted to
Yep.
find out, have you ever grown artichokes, Dee?
I have not. They grow them a lot down in Dallas, and sometimes they get actual artichokes. And a few people here in Oklahoma City grow them.
I do not know anybody who has attempted to grow these in Indiana. Now, as soon as I've said that, somebody's going to say, oh, I grow those all the time. But I looked these up on Burpee because I've been tempted in the past.
Uh huh.
This is not an easy vegetable to grow, I think.
No, and they're big. They're great big.
Yes. And so here's the seed sowing. They suggest you
Okay.
wrap the artichoke seeds in a damp towel and store it in your refrigerator for 2 weeks before sowing to give them the cold period they need to germinate. Yeah, we might put this video out and you're checking it out. Once chilled, plant seeds 1/4 inch deep in individual pots 6 to 8 weeks before last expected frost. So you're almost behind the 8 ball already.
No
Seedlings
thanks.
emerge in 14 to 21 days. So if you're going to put inside, they need to be under fluorescent lights. They suggest for 16 hours a day. They don't want a lot of fertilizer in the beginning. You may need to transplant the seedlings to a larger pot before you take them outside, and they need to be hardened off, of course, because you're growing them inside. Outdoors, they want full sun, deep, fertile, well-drained soil, afternoon shade where it's hot. How's your asparagus? I'm not asparagus. How's your artichoke growing looking, Dee?
Not so good. Not so good.
Yeah. And then the other thing is, it says in
They're
areas with
big.
they're big, and in a short growing season, they won't flower until the second year. But they're only
Right.
hardy, it says, in zone 7 through 9, where they would be perennial. But in my garden in 6, it seems like it would die.
Yeah,
And
it would.
then, I looked at common pests and problems, and it's like artichoke curly dwarf, botrytis, damping off, powdery mildew, versillium wilt, aphids, armyworms, flea beetles, leaf miners, slugs. Ah, you can buy plants
I'm,
from Burpee if you want.
yeah. So here's the deal. If you're going to grow them, buy a plant.
I'd buy
Yeah.
a plant. Definitely, I'd buy a plant.
Yeah. And then I mean, I think there are some enterprising gardeners who grow them in Oklahoma City, which is a solidly zone 7, or Norman, which is solidly 7B. Up here out in the country, it would be iffy. No thanks. I mean,
Yeah.
I like artichokes a lot, but I don't I don't eat them very often because it takes a lot of work to cook them and a lot of work to eat them
I do
fresh.
I do occasionally eat them fresh, and to me
I do love them.
you have to submerge them. They want to float. You have to get them to stay underwater, and you cook them for I don't
Or
know,
steam them.
steam them for like 15 minutes until that heart is soft, and then you
Right.
kind of peel off the leaves and you dip it the base in butter, and then you pull it through your teeth, and
Yeah,
it's a butter delivery system at that
it
point.
is a butter delivery system. Lemon butter one, if you are so
Yes,
inclined.
and
So
then you get to
that
the heart
I
and you have to scrape off all those needly things, and the heart is
because
pretty good.
it's a thistle.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's as hard to grow as it is to eat,
You
or as
know,
time consuming.
I would like to know if do any of our listeners grow artichokes?
Sure.
And I do think that our buddy Matt Mattis out in Massachusetts, I think he grows artichokes,
He probably does.
but he wrote The Art of Vegetable Growing, so you'd almost want it to be, I don't want to say a decorative plant, but it's definitely a statement plant.
I mean, it looks like a cardoon. There aren't they in the same family, cardoons and artichokes?
Don't ask me stuff off the top like that because I don't really know.
Like,
But anyway, it says mature spread is 48 inches tall and the height
uh-huh.
is 48 inches. So you need a 4 by 4 foot space. They suggest not putting it in containers because A, it may need to be overwintered outside in the ground, and B, it just doesn't do well in containers. So,
Cardoons and artichokes are closely related.
okay, you looked it up?
I did. I thought they were. I mean, their leaves look almost the same, only cardoons are bigger. And they are really popular. Like one year I went to the Dallas Arboretum and they had cardoons all at the front of the deal. And that was really, really cool. So there's that.
Excellent. And I see you have added a link to our show notes for the episode where we talked about asparagus and service berries, which is service berries
Oh,
is
a Melchior?
Emily
Melchior?
Melchior. Yeah, let's just go with that. Emily, yeah, let's just go with that.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's we're going right along. Now, we're not going to
Whew,
do the
that's all
alphabet
about
for
A.
books. We're not doing the alphabet for books.
No, we're doing whatever book is sent to us.
I'm going to read the quote and tell about what the book is, and you're going to talk about it, and we're going to talk about why I'm not talking about it.
Okay.
Some books are to be tasted, others are to be swallowed, and some few to be chewed and digested. And that is credited to Sir Francis Bacon. And that
Which I
was a
doubt it.
long time ago. So I would have to double check that source. But yes, yes, I do agree with the sentiment. So the book on our bookshelf, we got review copies, or Dee got a review copy of.
You're supposed to, but yours is stuck in the black hole of that warehouse.
Yes, as I think we talked last week about how Indianapolis has a mail distribution problem at their new distribution center that they opened in November. And so that book has been sitting there
For a
since,
month.
well, it left, as we said last week, it left Lebanon, 37 miles away from me, on February the 6th, traveled to Columbus, Ohio, and Cincinnati, Ohio, before arriving at Indianapolis, where it has been sitting ever since. And the book is Garden to the Max, Joyful, Visionary, Maximalist Design by Teresa Woodard. And this a little bit fits in with that grandma core where, you're bringing in a lot of different elements.
Yep.
But these gardeners, based on what you've told me, have taken it to a new level.
Taking it to the max, as it were. So, a maximalist garden, according to the flyleaf, is a bold aesthetic choice, yet it also brings vitality back to the earth in an abundant expression of more. So, I think you could, in the background of your mind while you're reading this book, you could do more, more, more. How do you like it? How do you like it? Because that is what the approach is in this book. And
It
it
does.
is fun. So I can't wait for you to get your copy
I can't wait
because
either.
we have seen some of these gardens. And in each section, she not only profiles the garden, she profiles the maximalists, which are the gardeners, and then, or gardener, depending on the garden. And then she promotes different styles in each section. Oh, and also there's a list of plants with a grid, a photographic grid. This book was expensive to produce.
Yes, and I'm looking at the description and it says it features an amateur ornithologist seeking to attract more birds,
Yep,
an event planner's tropical paradise,
yep,
a pair of city dwellers reducing their carbon footprint,
yep,
an urban gardener pioneering, promoting pollinator gardens, and
yep.
a lifelong biophilic propagating endangered plants to nurture insects. Boy, there's a lot of variety in that book, it sounds like.
And it has our friend's book, our friend's garden in it. Jim's.
Irvin.
And Irvin. Oh gosh, Irvin, I'm sorry, I forgot you. It has Irvin and it has Jim in it both. Jim
Oh yeah,
Charlie.
Jim Charlet up in Buffalo. We have both been to that garden, and it's a Harry Potter theme. And so he actually wrote a Harry Potter book. We never did get review copies, and I've seen it once in a bookstore,
Yeah.
an
Well,
herbology book that he
yes.
co-wrote. I still might get that. But that garden is really special, and that we both enjoyed going and seeing that in Buffalo in 2018, I think it was. No, 2017.
Yes.
2017.
It's a wonderful garden. Very creative.
And
Beautiful
then
color
Irvin
choices.
Etienne is out at the Newfields Art Museum and Garden, and he's been there forever. And
Which is in Indiana.
I saw his garden when he was in a urban garden, and it wasn't very big. And I have never seen so many tropical plants in such a small space in my entire life. It was literally like what I would imagine walking through a jungle was like in the
Yeah.
middle
Well, it
of
still is.
Indianapolis.
Now it's out in the country and he has more room. So you can
Yes.
only imagine. And if you knew him, when you see him just walking around a place, he looks really put together and he's kind of a minimalist, like in his dress and stuff. And his gardening style is like boom. It's really good.
Boom.
Look at this
Tropicals.
garden. She calls this an artist's garden. What would you say about this house?
That person does something other than gardening for a living, for
And also
sure.
art, unless they're like selling their paintings for $1 million. This is an actual, it looks like a chateau. And her name is Eileen Voltaggio. And it's a beautiful thing. But that house is huge. So it is a great book, a great coffee table book, huge size. And I do love the pictures of all the people. I think in this one, Irvin's holding a chicken.
We should
So
give
they show their
credit.
individuality. Yes, we got to give credit to the photographer.
Bob's Stefco, and I know I talked to Irvin one day. I was out at the art museum and ran into him pulling out mulberry weeds or something, or actually he had volunteers pulling out mulberry weed while he was directing them. But he said it was quite an event to have them come and photograph his garden, and he was really impressed by. They used a drone to get overhead
Yeah, because
footage,
they have
and
these
then
gorgeous overhead shots.
they took pictures of him and of course pictures of the garden, and so they really tried to, I guess, capture the personality of each garden and each gardener, because Irvin's holding one of his chickens.
Yes, he is. Didn't we go to Five Oaks Garden? And no, we didn't because this one's in Baton Rouge.
No, we did
Um,
not.
but we went to another famous oak garden. So I probably fit in this section that's more about naturalism.
Uh-huh.
I would say I am definitely a maximalist gardener. I stuff those plants in there like there's no tomorrow. And I've moved to more of a naturalist palette over the years because I care a lot about pollinators and other insects. So they also have Lauren Springer's garden in here, and she's the queen of naturalistic style.
Yeah, she's
And
in
here,
Colorado, isn't she?
yes, and we were supposed to see Lauren's garden when the bloggers were in Colorado's, you
Yeah,
know.
I did not go on that
Um,
trip.
she broke her, if I remember right, she broke her leg and it was really bad and she had to have surgery. So we didn't get to go. But here she is standing with a really cool dead I don't know, dead plant, dead branch.
It looks like it has a
It,
hornet's nest or something in it.
it might have a hornet's nest in it. It's got some kind of nest in it. So I'm going to guess it's an old hornet's nest. So anyway, Colorado, the
I'm
land of the little tiny flowers,
I
because
am
that's what it
excited to
is.
get that book
It's a
whenever it
good
does
book.
arrive. And I was going to say, I think just like last week's Pansy book, which is still sitting out and just, I love that
Mhm.
book. This one is coming out. Oh, it's available now. So it got published on February the 25th. So just 2 days ago.
So for the gardener you love in your life, even if that's yourself, this is a great book as a present because it teaches you about how to achieve certain types of gardening, what strategies are for different parts of the country, and it's extremely creative.
So it gives you courage to be the gardener that you can
Courage.
be. Courage.
Mhm.
And that is Garden to the Max, Joyful, Visionary, Maximalist Design by Teresa Woodard and wonderfully photographed by Bob Stefko. I look forward to getting it. It's once the post office decides that that bin's going to be empty and they're going to send it out.
Yeah, who knows? Those bins are really full in that video you sent me. All right, ready?
Ready.
My favorite time of day is the early quiet before the world wakes and the stars look back at me breathlessly. With tears in my eyes, I know it's good to be alive. I nod back at the sky. Yes, I will honor this life I was given. And that's by Jay Lynn.
That is beautiful, Dee. That is quite beautiful.
Found it on Facebook of all places. You know, here's the thing about all social media. Whatever you focus on, whatever you click on, you get more of it.
Exactly.
So I click on things that inspire me because there's a lot of stuff out there right now where a lot of people are very sad, unhappy, and some are even frightened. And I think to myself, does doom scrolling make one feel better?
No, it
No.
does not.
So I click on things that I think are beautiful.
There you
Dirt.
go. The dirt is solitary bees. Now, this started out, I got an email from somebody from Crown Bees who said, "Hey, can I come on your podcast and talk about solitary bees?" And I said, "No, you can't.
Have
Not because we don't
guests.
love solitary bees, because we don't have guests." But I've been looking
Yeah.
at their website and it seems like, you talk about attracting things. So they says on their website, among the 20,000 plus bee species worldwide, less than 10% are social bees like honeybees and bumblebees. The remaining 90% are solitary bees living independently without colonies, queens, or workers. Each solitary female
Yep.
bee builds her nest, gathers pollen and nectar, and lays her eggs to emerge next season. It says 75% globally of solitary bees species nest in the ground. We talked about those. No, well, those, yeah.
Well, the
Anyway,
bumblebee version, not the
yeah,
solitary bee version. The solitary bees want nothing.
yeah.
They go along their lives and just do their
Yes.
thing.
So they lay their eggs in tunnels just below the surface, which is a good reason not to cultivate in your flower bed. The other 25% are cavity nesting bees, which build nests in tunnels left by insects, hollow plant stems, and artificial bee houses. And this says, unlike some wood-borne insects, most cavity nesting bees use pre-made holes, ensuring they don't damage your deck or home. And it's crownbees.com, and we'll link to their website. They have a ton of useful information. If you do want to have a bee house, of
Yeah.
course they sell them. And so you can buy them
Oh,
and
yeah.
they talk about using sustainable materials, how to keep it clean, where to place it, all the things. So we're going to leave that as a source. But then early
Okay.
this morning, Dee,
Hmm.
Sarah Raven's podcast episode this week,
I saw it. Yes.
our role in supporting wild and solitary bees as gardeners with a gentleman named Richard Rickett. And
Hmm.
we'll link to it. It's episode 213. And this is a guy in Great Britain who's also interested in these solitary bees and talks about all the things they've done to encourage them in their own garden. And he's written a book. Now, the book, I think, is probably for people in Great Britain. So it's probably not one we're going to rush out to buy. But, if the library gets it, I might buy it. I might read it.
I mean,
But,
they have some different bee species than we do, but to attract solitary bees, there are some similar
oh,
things.
yeah, it would
So,
all be very similar. Because here's the other thing that he said, which I thought was kind of interesting, because I listened to this episode now. I hope I'm not misquoting him. But he said that he used to have hives but he switched to be making his garden more friendly towards the solitary bees
Right, because
because
they're
he
more in
says
danger.
in many urban areas, if there are too many hives, there's not enough nectar and pollen to sustain those hives.
True. That's true. It's true here. They talk about it all the time. And actually, honeybees are doing pretty well right now, especially in urban areas because they don't spray like they do out in the fields.
Right.
And so there's definitely some discussion back and forth about solitary bees taking it on the chin harder now than honeybees do. And honeybees get all the attention and all the study because they're an agricultural crop. Honey
Yes.
is.
Yes.
So we know more about honeybees than any other bee on the planet because we study it because we all like honey, me included. And I loved being a beekeeper, but since I can't anymore because of alpha gal syndrome, because alpha gal syndrome often makes us more allergic to other insect stings, I'm pretty interested in my solitary bees, although I do have a neighbor somewhere out here who has honeybees because I get honeybees here too. But maybe it was a good thing. This is my point, is maybe it was a good thing that I had to let go of my honeybees.
Yeah, it probably is a good thing. The interesting thing, and I think this was from the podcast, which I'm going to go back and listen to that again because it was really fascinating. He said even entomologists and bee specialists have a hard time identifying one solitary bee species from another, that there's a
I
lot of
bet.
similarities. And so it is, quite an interesting thing to study and learn more about. And it just kind of encourages people to leave things alone in your garden. Don't over cultivate in your flower bed. And because, by the way, under that leaf mulch is also the fireflies, just saying.
Yeah,
So
it
anyway,
is.
that's our dirt. Solitary bees. We'll link to crown bees, and we'll link to Sarah Raven's new podcast episode. And then that can become somebody's rabbit hole, which is what our next topics are about. So
You want to do the quote?
it is a common experience that a problem difficult at night is resolved in the morning after the committee of sleep has worked on it. John Steinbeck. I love that idea of the committee of sleep.
I do too. And I'm pretty sure John Steinbeck really said that because it sounds just like him. I enjoy I absolutely loved the book we read last year for Well Read Mom. I thought it was
That you
wonderful.
read. Grapes of Wrath?
Yeah. Yes. No, not Grapes of Wrath, the other one. I'll have to think of it. Was it Grapes of Wrath? No.
Cannery
Is it
Row?
great? Nope. One Cannery Row either. East of Eden. We read
Okay.
East of Eden, which
Okay.
I've read Grapes of Wrath. I've not read Cannery Row, but I thought East of Eden was one of the most amazing books I've ever read. So, rabbit holes. Speaking of books, I'll do mine first. I'm part of Well Read Mom, which is a book club. And last month I did not read our selection because it was 1,023 pages long. And I really can't stand that author. I'm not going to say who it is. It's not anybody who's super famous, but I've read some of his other books and I never was satisfied. So when I started this one and was dissatisfied, I thought, no, I don't have enough life yet to read this book.
You on the down low on the QT, will you tell me who that is?
I'll be glad to after I'm off the podcast. So now this month we're reading Cry the Beloved Country, which most people have read in high school or college, but I never read it. So I'm really glad we're reading it. It is a beautifully written book that was written in 1948, I think. But it's about South Africa and it's about apartheid, which makes it a very sad subject. But the book is so beautifully written that you remember why you used to read books.
Oh, I love books like that.
That's how I felt about East of Eden, too, to tie these two things together. That's how I felt about the book we read at the beginning of the year. So, and last year we read Brideshead Revisited, which I also loved. I have found with these older books, especially with the prose, sometimes it's good to also listen to them on Audible. So when I get in my car, I flip it on Audible. And then when I come home, I read it, especially it's long. This one's not that long. But in this case in particular, this book is good because it's good to listen to because there are so many African names
Uh-huh.
and there are so many different tribes that it's good to hear it pronounced. And so that's really fun too. Because I
That would
was
be
not
fun.
pronouncing in my head the way they're actually pronounced.
Well,
So,
you can tell a reader because of how they mispronounce words that they've never heard, but they've read them.
yeah, and I did that my whole life, and my mom used to kind of make fun of it. Okay, so what is your rabbit hole?
So
Oh,
it is bookish as
back to
well.
that again.
So, well, let me just back up to say I'm still reading Jane Austen's Bookshelf by Rebecca Romney, and she is a rare book specialist and collector and seller, all the
Mhm.
above. And anyway, so the book is kind of about Jane Austen and the books she would read and those authors, but it's also about book collecting. And some of the things that she's written have really helped me understand like all the books I have and why I have them. And so while things seem a bit out of control, I have felt like this week that I've zeroed in on the books that I really want to have. And so that's
Uh-huh.
going to allow me to release some books that's like, it's a nice book. I don't need it. I'm going to release it into I don't know how I'm going to release it into the wilderness, so to speak. But so I kind of like have these genres of books that I'm collecting now. Obviously, The Lost Ladies. I'm still entranced by all those books that go like January to December, where they describe a
Uh-huh.
year.
Me
Uh,
too.
I like books by D.E. Stevenson, so I picked up one of those. So when you do that, then suddenly you can recognize, oh yeah, that's my quote unquote catnip. I like that book. I'll take that book. So that was my rabbit hole, was just kind of figuring that all out. And all the books I bought this week are all catalogs, so that is good, right?
Yes, sure. I think so.
So, and by the way, one of the rabbit holes I went down is, are you familiar with the author P.D. James?
Of course. Yes. Read a
So
lot of them.
I don't think I've read P.D. James before.
Oh, you will love P.D. James. Classic.
So I bought her autobiography
Uh-huh.
because, well, it was for sale at the used bookstore, but it's kind of like a diary through an entire year. But in the diary, she talks about what she's doing that day, but then there's reminiscences to the past.
Huh.
So,
Only she could do that because she's so
yes.
smart.
And then, of course I have to look up and she just grew up a normal, I guess, British middle class person, but she became a
Yeah.
baroness. She was granted a baroness and was in the House of Lords.
Yeah, she was a big deal.
She was a big deal. She
Oh, and
just
she
died
did.
in 2014.
Yeah, I forgot that she did Death Comes to Pemberley, which was made into a show. I knew about all of her other stuff. Yeah, the Daglish series. So when you get done reading some of her books, you can go watch the BritBox, the British show, Inspector Daglish. It is good.
It's based on her books.
Yeah, and he's great. You'll love it. It wasn't made immediately. And then they also did I think a movie about Death Comes to Pemberley, which goes back to Pride and Prejudice, and supposedly the two of them are solving a murder together. So that was a later book, 2011. But
So,
she wrote forever.
so I have a to be read list that will take me to about the age of 110 at this point.
I know, I bet.
So anyway, it's kind of fun. And the one bookstore was out on the west side and it's a bigger half price books than ours. And they had a lot better selection. And I did pick up, like I said, 4 or 5 good used gardening books from the 50s and 60s.
Right.
So that's all good. But anyway, that was my rabbit hole.
Yeah, the first episode, so the first Inspector Daglish book, I'm looking
Yeah.
it up now, was Cover Her Face from 1962, the year I was born. Okay. And they've actually made that into a show. It's really good.
Well,
And
and here's,
she's known as the Queen of Crime.
yeah, the successor to Agatha Christie.
Well, she was a contemporary too. So it was complicated. I think they had kind of they both were publishing at the same time too. She just outlived Dame
So
Agatha.
she also wrote a dystopian type novel that sounds interesting called The Children of Men.
Yeah, that's been made into a movie, I think.
Yeah, it was made into a movie, but it's in a world with no children and no future. Then it takes
Right.
place in 2021.
How
So,
funny.
Yeah, fun. She published it, I think it says 1992, but anyway, it has a very Christian undertones to it, they said.
Sure.
Very much a Christian novel.
Interesting.
Because she's very big in the Anglican church as well. So anyway, we could go on, but we are a gardening podcast, not a book podcast. So as soon as I get begonias for home and garden and have looked through geraniums for home and garden, I will let you know if you should seek out good use copies.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so garden commissions. I'll do mine first. I have, oh, well, you should do yours first because mine ties into yours. Go.
Well, I am hoping that the greenhouse will contact me sometime in the next week and tell me that pansies and violas are ready. I did see on Instagram there's a garden center up on the far north side that got some pansies in, and I'm like, oh, got to buy them from my local place. Anyway, the weather really looks good for the next week or so. We have a lot of wind today. This is Friday, the last day of February. So I will be out puttering around in the garden and trying to get a few things cleaned up, checking on all the different flowers that are coming up, enjoying all the crocuses. I got to tend to my microgreens, check on the patio palace of propagation, all the things of the first week of March. How about you?
Well, we're coming into March, and March is a big month here. And the people who are the naturalists still aren't cleaning up. But at my house, you have to clean up or you're not going to get there. You know what I mean? Because people asked me the other day, how much am I reducing it? And I said, well, I'm reducing it by, it's a lot. I'm taking a lot out, but there's still a lot left.
Yeah.
A lot.
Aren't you taking about 2/3 out or
No.
half?
No. I'm taking a third of the back garden out. Well, really half of the back garden. And then I'm taking off the 2 beds that face the street.
Okay.
The things I can't get to. I asked Bill the other day, I go, so how much is that gone? He goes, about 1/10. And I was like, 1/10? I don't think he's right. I think it's about 1/4. Okay, so I've only seen a few pansies here, so I'm probably going to run to Terracotta today, it's their opening day in Guthrie. And because they are red dirt plants, which is the place that ships regionally everywhere, they always have some really cool pansies nobody else has. And I think I need some. I think it's time. It's time for me to put some in my
I definitely think you need
pots.
some.
And I want blue ones. But then I get really excited about those ruffly pink ones. So I don't know. Let's see. So my pansies I planted from seed are still struggling. I brought them indoors because the stupid mice ate them. And then I hid one pansy plant in with something thorny in the greenhouse.
Yeah.
Eat this one and you'll get stabbed. So
That's
this is
kind
how
of
you're
mean of you, Dee. That's
don't
not you.
That is so mean. And
Uh,
then let's see, because they ate every pansy I had and some of the calendula and all of my greens. So yeah, I'm feeling pretty ugly about the mice. So I may cut back the lavender. I need to go out and see if it has buds on it. I don't know, because I don't want to cut off the buds. And it's kind of like a shrub. If you wait too long,
it won't
I did
flower
cut it
well.
back in the fall. So I may just leave it. It looks really good right now. And I just don't think I want to cut it back.
That's
So
another one. That fall was so mild that I had brand new lavender flowers, which I cut, and they're
I did
dried in a
too.
vase in the kitchen still.
I know. I didn't cut mine. I should have. So what'll happen? So if people want to know, what'll happen is if I don't shear it back, it'll bloom great, but parts of it will flop over because it'll
Right.
be so big. But I think I'm okay with that, and I'm just gonna shear it back in the fall. Okay, I just made a decision. So basically, this week I'm just gonna putter around, tend to things. I've got to water all my house plants because they're going, excuse me, I need some water. So there you go.
There you go. Well, that is it for this week. Thank you for listening to The Garden Angelist. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode. We publish every week on Wednesdays at 12 a.m. Eastern.
If you subscribe to our free newsletter, you get a link to listen to the podcast a whole day early and links to the products we discuss. Some of these are affiliate links.
And on that newsletter, you can leave us comments and tell us everything you want us to know about you and ask us questions. But if you want to help support us in other ways, use our affiliate links. If you buy something after clicking through on them, we're in a small commission and it costs you nothing.
Or you can set up a monthly subscription through Buzzsprout. Several of you have. Or you can make a one-time donation through PayPal. And some of you have been generous that way too.
Yes, we want to thank everyone who has done so. It helps us pay for podcast hosting.
It was lovely to chat with all of you over the garden gate. Bye until next week.
Bye, everybody.